Okay. Thank you for coming. This event is really geared towards the graduate students in the Institute. The hope is that you'll hear enough presentations by the faculty to at least get an idea of what the faculty do. If you are interested in what they do, it might relate to what your own research is. Not all the faculty could be here. Not all the graduate students could be here. It's almost impossible nowadays to get everybody in the same place at the same time. But what we will do is we've put together a PowerPoint, which you'll get a copy of, that will have all of the presentations today. And any of the faculty who couldn't attend will get one PowerPoint from each of them too, because it is actually a requirement to be a member of the Institute. So let me start off. I'm Paul Majewski. I'm the director. Jasmine Saros is here. She's the associate director. And then Betty Lee and Becky Adesi, you know from the office, we wouldn't be able to function without them. They're the two most important people in the administration. So as of a few years ago, the VPR, Vice President for Research Office, started to talk about global impact, local relevance, and we certainly are one of the units in the university that does this. Many of the things that we do are outside of Maine, but the goal is always to bring that information or some version of that information back to Maine, back to the US, and then vice versa, back to where we're going. We've been around, the plus didn't end up in there, but we've been around for 50 plus years, I think 53 years now, which makes us arguably the oldest interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary climate research unit in the world, or at least one of them, I'd say probably in the world. And the thing that we do that is the same as a lot of other climate research units is we study what's going on today. And there's a lot of satellite imagery and instrumental data that's available. However, we, because of Sean Burkle, who I think is here, maybe not, package that into Climate Reanalyzer, which I hope many of you are familiar with. It's an amazing tool that allows you to understand how things work on a global scale, all aspects of physical aspects of climate. But the present record has holes in it. You can't have weather stations all over the world. They're not evenly spaced. So that data gets changed into what's called climate reanalysis data. And some of the records, although they're very good, only go back 20 or 30 years. So in effect, we also do something that is not so common with climate research units, and we have been doing this since day one in the Institute. We have a variety of mechanisms or tools that we use to understand past climate, and you'll hear about some of that today. Why do we look at past climate? To extend the record, to understand better what the perspective, where we are today, how we got here, what are the driving forces that have made our climate the way they are, how impacts have changed over time, and I think perhaps most importantly, what's the full dynamic range of climate? In the last few years, we have experienced dramatic changes, fast changes, big changes in climate, and these have existed way back in the past, not necessarily for the same reasons. Today, they're forced largely by anthropogenic injection of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, but understanding the dynamic range, how fast things can happen, where they happen, when they happen, and whether or not they're precursors is really important. Because in my opinion, that leads us towards one of the most important things that our institute can do, and that is to improve predictions for future climate. You can do that by adding more monitoring, looking in the past, but ultimately what we really care about in planning is what will our lives be like in the next few years, and not just by 2100, but much shorter term. So in terms of past climate, and I won't go into the details, we've developed several new technologies, and I shouldn't even say had, there are more that are evolving. In terms of current climate, and I already alluded to one, Climate Reanalyzer, we've developed new software. That is not the only type of software that we look at. After all, we look at the physical, chemical, biological, and social aspects of climate in our institute. So we have other software that deals with some of that. And we've taken new approaches to understanding the future, not just thinking about future climate as a linear phenomena, but also thinking about all of the ways, how fast it can change, what are the different possibilities, the plausible scenarios for the future. We're funded, and this is not a complete list, we're funded by many different organizations in almost all of these cases. It requires writing proposals. It's a long, tedious process. It's not a terribly inviting process, but it does allow you to do the things that you think are important if they're competitive. And we have done very, very well in this regard. We have field programs and other sorts of programs all over the world, and obviously within Maine. This is just a quick example from a long time ago. There is not a continent on the planet that we don't work on. We have tons of partners in the Institute, or not in the Institute, associated with the Institute. Within the University of Maine and the system, you don't need to read all of these. We have tons of academic partners. One of them is right in this building, Earth and Climate Sciences. Others are School of Marine Science, the School of Biology and Ecology, History, Computing Science, various engineering programs, anthropology, and others. We have a lot of partners that we work with within Maine, state, and other campuses. We have a lot of federal examples. These are largely where our funding comes from, although we also get private funding through foundations and individuals. We have many, and these are just partial lists. We have many US institutions that we either share research with or have other sorts of association, and a lot of international partners too at the same time. Several years ago, the university decided that they would try to determine which of the academic and which of the research programs are really sort of particularly outstanding, with the understanding being that if you identify those, you create sort of a framework or a bar, and others will begin to think about, how do I become one of those too? Of the 7 research so-called signature programs, we ended up being one of them. And this series of bubbles shows you the sorts of things that we work on. I won't go through the detail. I think some of it's explained perhaps in that brochure. But in addition to looking at past, present, and future climate, we also have all sorts of activities related to adaptation, sustainability. We are not the only group on campus that does these sorts of things. In fact, 2 years ago, we did a survey called the Climate Challenge Consortium, and within the University of Maine system, there are slightly over 400 faculty and staffers who are heavily involved in climate in one way or another. So we assembled that group. We've had a workshop already to talk about things. And so there's a lot of power in the University of Maine and the University of Maine system with respect to climate, which in fact is one of the primary strategic goals for the university, is dealing with a change in climate. And to do that, you need to think about how one would adapt, how one would mitigate, where the potential challenges are, where the opportunities are, but this is all underpinned by understanding how the climate system operates and in fact where it's going. We are associated with at least 2 large, in this particular case, an international group. Carl Kreutz is our representative. It's the University of the Arctic, and if you are interested in student opportunities related to the University of Arctic, speak to Carl. We're also associated with the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, which is in Boulder, Colorado. It includes many universities in the US and in some cases other places that do atmospheric research, which we do. Kirk Mosh is our representative there. I don't have an overhead for him, but you can speak to him. And then, of course, we have various other activities that are going on. Jasmine Saros is the lead on the NRT that we have in the Arctic, and many of you, particularly graduate students, know that well and are associated with. That's just some of the basic big things we're involved in. As graduate students, you have the opportunity to write a short proposal to the Churchill and/or the Sturgis Exploration Fund grants in order to do something either directly related to your research, It might be going someplace with having another person go with you into the field. It might be going to another lab. It might be trying to access something that you can't normally access. And it can be directly related to your research, or if in fact you decided that you wanted to spread out and do something slightly different, you could apply for funds there. The two people who lead that committee are Dan Sandweiss and Carl Kreutz. When is the solicitation going out for that? Okay, keep your eye out. Not only does it provide you with funds and several $1,000s potentially, you put together a budget, a proposal. It's a really good exercise, but it gives you the opportunity to do something even a little bit more independently. Most of you are supported on research grants, some on teaching assistance. This allows you to build something maybe absolutely of your own, and it also looks great on your record. We also have, for any of you who are going into the field, and that includes going to even a meeting in a foreign country, the people going to the Committee of the Parties as part of the IPCC in, I think it's Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan in the near future. Everybody, particularly if you're going in the field, but even if you're just going to a big meeting someplace else, we want you to make out a Climate Change Institute's field safety report. That report will also be copied to any other units that you're associated with, in particular your academic unit. It is there primarily so that all of your academic unit can know how to get a hold of you. So you'll be asked to actually say, what sort of form of communication are you using that you can be linked to? Who do you talk? Who is actually watching what you're not necessarily watching, but who is the person back home here who is listening to what's going on so that they can track you to some degree? What are you going to be doing in the field? Where's the closest hospital? Things like that. We used to have this as a more voluntary thing, but not that we've ever had a bad situation, but we realized that it was just getting awkward to try to get this material from everybody. We all tend to want to just go off and do what we want to do and don't necessarily leave information behind. So now it's required that you fill out this safety form. And if you don't fill out the safety form and you go to register on Concur, either to charge things or, more importantly, to be protected by University of Maine insurance, we have to approve your use of Concur, and we base it on the safety report. It's not a complicated thing to fill out. Once you've done one, they're pretty obvious. And I turn them around really fast and read them and make minor comments like you forgot the number that you were supposed to give us on your Garmin, etc. We have two events that are particularly important to us. We have several during the year. First one is this one. It's where we, the faculty, introduce ourselves to you, the graduate students, and others, we, the faculty and staff. The other one is the Bourne Symposium. This office was Harold Bourne's, not original office, but it has all of his things in it. He passed away 2-3 years ago. He was the founder of our institute more than 53 years ago. And he established the sort of the ground rules for how we have been successful over this entire time. And as you walk around the walls of this building or Sawyer, you'll see dates. And these are selected, not all of the expeditions that were undertaken at that time. And there is one that's I'm sure it's in here too, that has Hal, the first director, George Fenton, the second director, happened to be on the same trip together back when they were both basically kids. In addition to the small stories from examples of the expeditions conducted during a particular year, just to remind you, if you get money from the Churchill or the Sturgis Fund, you have to file a report. That report will go there. That report will also be on our website. We have a pile of labs associated with the Institute. I won't go through them. Many of the people who run these labs are either here. If you're interested in one of these labs and you'll all have a copy of this PowerPoint, then please get back to Betty. Becky or me or Jasmine and find out who the person is who runs that lab, so that if you're interested in learning about the lab, using the lab, you have the ability to do that. There's the second page of those labs. And then labs and building keys. I think you're probably all settled with this, but we obviously have the Sawyer building is our primary laboratory facility. We have a portion of the upstairs of this building, and then we also have E3RB, which is our large storage area, but it's also used to conduct preparation for field activities, et cetera. So at this point, Seth, if you would like to, Seth's going to talk about the graduate program, and then Andre is going to talk about other things related to the Institute, more technical things, if you can. Okay. If not, I'll come up and speak for you.
Cool, thanks. So I'm Seth Campbell. For those of you that haven't met me, I've met many of you, but for those new grad students, I will be your kind of point of contact for any grad student related questions. But I have a partner in crime now. Dan Sandweiss is right here in front. Dan's going to be stepping into the role springish to summer, I guess, but helping, yeah, summer, but so helping me over the next year as things come up. So things that we'll generally help you take care of. You all have, as grad students, you all have course requirements, you have various forms that you have to complete and fill out. So I'm there to kind of help you with that and provide guidance along with your advisor, your primary advisor, and your committee. So that's things like your program of study, and then any documentation that you need to provide as you're trying to graduate. If there's any questions related to courses that you might want to substitute in or course requirements within CCI, those are also questions that would come to us. For certain questions like courses, there might be situations where we actually have a committee that kind of works through those things. So more of the story, come see me if you have questions about anything related to the graduate program. Encourage you to kind of speak and get to know your other graduate students. We do have 3 graduate student representatives that are helping us with some of the duties we need to kind of maintain as a program. Kenzie, right here. Kenzie is one of our graduate students, and she's going to be kind of co-chairing the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee this year. So we have DEI meetings fairly regularly, and Kenzie stepping in to help with that role. That meeting is open for all to attend. In fact, we encourage everyone to attend. They're basically opportunities for us to kind of get together, think about DEI topics, how we can make a more inclusive and better culture in CCI. Kenzie has a nicely drafted email that will go out to grad students soon with a form that we're asking grad students to fill out that have questions related to DEI, things that you might be interested in, seeing discussed at any DEI meetings, and we specifically decided let's send this to students first to get some student input on that. So Kenzie will be your point of contact there for DEI. Second, Anna, are you kicking around?
I'm on Zoom.
Oh, hey, Anna, glad you're here. So Anna Trubia is acting as our representative for the grad student government. So if you're not aware of this, the grad student government offers grants that you can apply to. I think they're max at $750 or $850 that you can apply to for traveling to conferences, additional funding to cover fieldwork expenses, things like that. And we highly encourage you to attend. But for us to be eligible to for students to submit to that, we need a representative that attends those meetings. So Anna has kindly volunteered to act as our representative. So everyone thank Anna for that. And she also can kind of gather information on things that are going on with grad student government that are going to impact you all as students. So that's what Anna's doing.
Well, I'm noting that the competition occurs twice a year, in the fall and in the spring. So there are 2 opportunities, and they're not mutually exclusive. If you write
Yes.
proposals.
You can get both. Yes. Yep. Most of our students are very successful in the grad student government proposal writing, because we have a tendency that's what we do. We write a lot of proposals. So usually you will get funding if you write a proposal. So we highly encourage you to apply for those. And then the last, Matilda, I saw you back here. So Matilda is working as our CCI faculty rep. So she's going to be attending our CCI faculty meetings, and her role will be to kind of act as an interface between graduate students and our faculty. So if you as graduate students have concerns or questions related to CCI, related to how things are operating, field work, anything that comes to mind, you would work with Matilda to kind of get those questions to us. And likewise, she will act as our liaison to kind of give information to you all as things come up about CCI. Okay, so those are kind of the three roles. So again, thank those three people for kind of stepping into those roles. I think they're pretty important roles. Let's see. Beyond that, I did not add a slide for myself, so I might just kind of explain what I do as well really quickly. I have a group, we focus on polar geophysics, so you'll see me around a fair amount doing glaciology and other geophysics applications. And I'm also one of the co-directors for the Juneau Icewood Research Program. And we have a fair number of student opportunities for grad students to be involved in. I've had students in my own group, but also students from other groups helping us with field activities, helping teach education programs for high school students. Carl Kreutz and I are going to be running a course in the spring that we're probably going to have money to pay students to participate in to help us with some kind of weather reporting type work as well. So if you're interested in working with students, kind of learning reporting, writing skills, field work, please feel free to come see me on any of those topics as well. Dan, do you have anything else to add on the CCI stuff?
No, I think
Okay.
that's good.
Great. That's for me. Thanks all.
Again, welcome to Climate Change Institute. I'll tell you a couple of things that you probably all know most of this information, but if I forget something, I think people will help me here. So the first part is Zoom and video conferencing. So we're usually using Zoom, and you can easily start Zoom by going to this web portal that you have, and you can connect it through your calendar. So there's a lot of options, and you can also send this Zoom link. So like we started this 5-6 years ago before pandemic, and back then Zoom was something novelty, but generally now I think everybody knows how to use it. Another thing I want to mention, you have a UMaine Google account. So professionally, please use it for email communications. And it's kind of an expectation here that if you receive a mail from somebody, try to respond within 24 hours if it's possible. If not, if you're traveling, there is a way to schedule some kind of out of the office message. It also will be helpful so people don't wonder if you receive a mail, what happened to you, where you at. So just be professional. So the next thing is we have a UMaine software. And if you follow this link, I didn't double check it this year. It's an old slide, but technically it should be a lot of software. So if you get a computer that's not managed by University of Maine, you can actually go to IT website and download a lot of applications and install it. One of them is like MATLAB, SAS. You can, I think, install, some Microsoft products, also some like other statistical packages as well. So generally you can do it, and that's like a whole sort of a web page where you can actually go and follow instructions. If you have a problems, IT will be able to help you. So you go to this IT website and you create a ticket. We found over the years that quite often actually a lot of issues with IT you can resolve by simply calling them. And it's faster, it's almost instant. If you create a ticket, you end up getting like 10, 15 messages about successful reading your letter, about something like starting your process. So you might want to just call. In many cases, it will just be self-resolving sort of problem. IT support, usually you will need it if you have some big problem and you don't know how to deal with this. So I say talk to your advisor first before you start something. Because especially if it's related to lab equipment, quite often all these computers, they highly specialize. Just don't put any new software in it because you feel like you know something about these computers, because something might not work after that. So just talk to your advisor or primary person who runs this lab. That's also important. We recommend to use this network, eduroam. It's really good way to actually, when you're traveling, I found that I was able to connect my phone actually using eduroam like a link in Munich. I was just walking there somewhere and suddenly it started working and receiving messages. So it's a very interesting, it's a global system, all the universities connected, and you can easily use it. So it's definitely good system to use. And I think they're going to retire Tether Network Tempest here. So you pretty much, I would recommend just figure out how to use eDROM. It's pretty easy. There's instructions online how to do it. You can connect it in your phone. There is a little app that allows you to configure access to eDROM, and then suddenly you get all the security keys on your system. There is also like one issue right now. University is trying to make you use this little app for two-factor like a security. So basically the idea is like you log into your email, you know, and suddenly on your phone, there is an app. It works great. But the problem with this, if you're suddenly switching your phones and migrating to a new phone, that particular system that university is using right now, not very good. And you might simply be completely locked out. So I'd say be careful with this. If you want some high level of security, just use some like personal Google account and some Google apps. I don't think you will need it here, but generally, whoever. So CCI conference room policy, generally it's a very simple policy. Try to leave the space the way you found it. Meaning if you know something about connecting new cables, disconnecting cables, go ahead and do it, not a problem at all. But please put everything back the way it was. Because quite often we would find something would write on the wall with like a marker because they were thinking that it was like a wall that you can write something on. So if you're not sure, check with somebody who knows. I would say Becky is a good resource. Otherwise, we had to repaint that wall in a Sawyer conference room recently. Same with the cables. If you disconnect it again, put it back. And we have some like proprietary systems, but if you don't know and you want to use something, ask us. We will be able to help you. Like ask Becky first. And if she needs more additional sort of guidance, I will be able to help it. It's not a lot. We're mainly talking about these two buildings, Sawyer and Bryan. So if anybody has any questions right now about this, I don't think it's that complicated. So you know it. Yep. I think that's it, right, Paul? Invited speakers and lectures, that's yours.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that got in, but.
Okay.
If you back up to 1 second, Andre. So invited speakers and lectures, if you have suggestions about people you'd like to hear from, please tell us. We have our normal presentations on Mondays, 12 to 1. Please attend when you can. And if you'd like to suggest somebody, we're running out of time slots. But as you know from our speaker this past Tuesday, we can also do it at other times. So please understand that if you're interested, know somebody, we can certainly work with you, particularly by Zoom, but in some cases we can bring them here. And maybe you can address the CCI media code of conduct.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we had an issue that somebody created some kind of a page or using some social media system, start putting some information related to CCI. Turns out they were using sort of image of Climate Change Institute to post their personal information. I think you need to be very careful. So when you're posting something in social media, don't say we at CCI think that. So make sure it's clear that it's your personal opinion. And there is a CCI code of conduct. I think it's developed for the situation where you suddenly want to create your own social media sort of a platform and broadcast some information. So you have to coordinate it basically with CCI administration. That's probably a good idea anyway when you're doing it, because you can end up in a big trouble. And generally at the Institute, I think over the years, we try to be very balanced. We have really good relationship at the state of Maine with like all the stakeholders. And I think it's really important to keep it this way. So we don't really create some kind of, alienation and sudden situation that, Institute looks bad in the hands of people who are actually giving some, funding to the university. So a couple of more items. You can actually manage your personal page. So when you go and you just arrive here, Betty actually would take your name from your email and some information about your advisor and create a web page for you. But the reality is the web page, it's like a personal page. So if you really feel like you want to manage it, it's relatively simple. You go to university media website and you request account in this platform. We're using WordPress here. And in a day or two, you basically will tell them you're part of the Climate Change Institute or your affiliated department, and you will tell them that you would like to you would like to access to the webpage. Once you have your account name, just please email it to Betty or me, and we will be able to activate that page so you will be able to edit it, your personal page. Why you want to do it? Because quite often you want to put on updates, you want to put some papers, you want to put some new exciting things using social media code of conduct. Oh, and also we recommend actually you start something like your personal professional page. So the couple of good websites, if you're in academia, we recommend to use ORCID. How many of you have ORCID account? Yeah, see, at least we got a couple. Yeah. So it's a really good way to put your professional information. It tracks all your papers, it tracks all your conferences, it tracks all your personal sort of accomplishments in academia. If you suddenly decided you want to go, private industry, LinkedIn is a good way. And again, you have your personal page, and the idea is you can potentially go to your main website, like your personal page, and link it to your professional page. So when you're migrating to your next level, or you're kind of finishing your tenure here, you're moving somewhere else, you still have an opportunity to basically take all this information with you without really losing all this. Obviously, your page will stay here for a short time, and then obviously we'll have to disable it because you're not going to be a current student. So that's kind of a good way to keep all your information current and also coordinated and synchronized. So yeah, so if you have reports, you would like to post something on the CCI website, you have point of contact is Betty. So just simply email her and you will be able to put some exciting information, and it's actually encouraged. Let's say you publish a new journal, you published the paper in your journal, you have some exciting meeting you attended. It's really a good way to put it on a CCI website so other peers know what you're doing. And also it's a good way to put, again, good image to the institute. So please do that if possible. And I think, yeah, we discussed this part. So you're going to use some of these links. Some of them should be functional. So I already covered that. And I think that's an example of your personal page here. So as you can see, Wendy already graduated, right? But that's an idea, basically what you could put there. Again, there's news items I already covered. Again, email something. Ideally, the way you email information, put some header, put some text, put some image, and email everything to Betty. It will save her a lot of time, and she can just post it instantly. So expedition reports, this is examples here. And again, every time you participated in expeditions that funding was provided through the Institute, it's required that you have these reports. So they're not really long and they're really exciting. So you can put some nice pictures and text images using media code of conduct, obviously. So that's it. I think I will stop here, and that's it.
Thank you, Andre. And Dan, just a couple of quick more items. Report that you have here. This is the second one that we put out. We put them out every few years. This actually won an award that he should be congratulated for doing all the work on it, largely because of the cover. But the stories that are highlighted in here, certainly not all the stories. This covers 5 or 6 years, and the way that you get onto our news feed, or the way that you get in a booklet like this in a few more years, whether you graduated or not, is by submitting things to Betty, to the Institute. We want to know, as Andre just said, when you publish papers, when something important has happened, you got a Fulbright, some other award, you went someplace, you learned something that was important that you feel the rest of the Institute, if not the world, wants to know. And this actually very often gets picked up by the University of Maine news. And after that, or even off our news feed, it gets picked up by a whole series of reporters eventually. So again, please tell us what you do so we can advertise what you do. It's very hard for us to guess what you do. We do want to advertise your successes. Your successes are our successes. I mentioned that there are 2 really important meetings. One is this one. That's basically for us to tell you what we do. The Bournes one is the second one. That's where you tell us what you've done. You'll actually end up writing a 1-page short paper for it. It can go into your resume as a non-peer-reviewed paper. It's a good exercise. You'll get a template eventually. And there's one other event that we have going on this year. We haven't quite set on the date. It'll probably be the end of November, but we're in the process of developing our next 5-year plan. And we invite all of you and people who are not here, obviously, to come to that retreat. It'll go for a couple of hours. There'll probably be some timing pretty close to this. And the intent is to present at least a draft version of the 5-year plan that we put together. That's the leadership team in the Institute. And then to get your input. And then after that, we basically clean it up and submit it to the Vice President of Research, which is where the Institute reports to. So, any questions about anything? Pizza will appear when we're finished with the talks. So I think we can go right on to the talks. Becky.
Okay, thank you. So I consider myself a little bit of an oddball here because I work on animals. I'm an associate professor in the School of Biology and Ecology, and I study thermoregulatory physiology, mostly in mammals and mostly small ones because those are the ones we can fit in boxes. And I look at it both from an ecological side and an evolutionary perspective, which I think helps us predict the impacts of climate change. And if this interests anybody, and I currently have projects in Maine and Malaysia and other warm places, which makes it a bit different than a lot of the Arctic research here. If these types of topics are interesting to you, my graduate class has been moved to the spring now, so there's time for people to sign up for next semester. I've already had interest from a couple of marine folks, so it's going to be, there'll be some looking at how animals interact in marine systems as well as terrestrial this year. And we go over the basics, everything from at a molecular level, how temperature impacts capacities for animals to move and perform, and then going up into more kind of modeling stuff later on through the semester. So it's a seminar-based class, and if you'd want to join us, the information is there, and it'd be great to have more folks from different departments. And that's it for me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kat Allen. I'm in the School of Earth and Climate Sciences. I'm a paleoceanographer, which means that I'm study the ocean's history. And then to do that, it takes a big team of people. I've got a bunch of wonderful students working in my group currently, undergraduates and graduate students. There's our summer team right there. And the main thing that I do is I use microfossils that grow when they're living. They either grow floating in the water column or on the seafloor, and then they become preserved in sediments. And those sediments build up over time, and then we can go out and collect sediment cores and bring them back to a lab where we get to play with mud and apply various techniques to learn more about past environments from that. So my approach is mostly using information from the sediment record, and we have various, we've developed some geochemical techniques right here at UMaine, and we've got some new instruments. Mike Hanley and I have been working together pretty closely over the last several years to set up new methods for measuring carbonates, both in solution, dissolved material, and also in CC Cruz Uribe's lab, doing some laser ablation work. So there's lots of different techniques that we have been developing in-house that are available. And I also want to mention for graduate students in particular, other resources that you might be interested in. In my laboratory, I have a microbalance, and we have lots of microscopes. We have a furnace. We have hoods, and we have a lot of bench space for laying out cores if you're in need of such a thing, and a lot of other general resources that I'd be happy to share if and when needed. So it's really nice to meet you. I'm glad that you're here, and the new grad students, some familiar faces and some new ones. And my office is right here in this building on the first floor, room 117. So stop by. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha Mignani. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology and Climate Change Institute. And my research, in the broadest sense, looks at the connection between everyday action and broad-scale social change. So I use methods that are grounded in ethnography and the study of material culture to examine everyday and individual reconnections to local environments, be it through the resurgence of craft, food, or other locally rooted forms of production. And I try to understand how these actions form larger movements for Indigenous rights, for sustainability, and for climate action. So launching from these questions, I've spent a decade working in the Arctic, in the Sami indigenous homeland that's across Fenno-Scandinavia. And I've been working with Sami and Finnish craft artisans who are part of wider Sami cultural movements. I've also been looking at broader intersections of some of these questions with issues of large-scale infrastructural development tied to global geopolitics and climate change. This is especially pertinent as the Arctic has come into global focus, not only as a place that experiences the impacts of climate change the most, but also is increasingly at the center of these competing state security and territorial interests. So I'm also beginning a new project somewhere a bit warmer. That's in process. So I'm beginning a project on similar themes of post-colonial production and sustainability in Cyprus. And I look forward to connecting with students who are interested in any of these themes. I'm teaching grad courses on Arctic anthropology and the anthropological dimensions of environmental policy, which may be of broader interest to CCI students. So thank you.
Okay, you were following along on the list and you were looking for Seth. You already met him, he's here. So hi, everyone who I haven't met and those who I have, know most of the people in here a little bit. My name's Kylie Daly. This year I'm a postdoctoral research associate here at CCI, in particular working on some Arctic freshwater issues and how they relate to sort of some human environments with Jasmine Saros and her lab. So I have an interdisciplinary background in environmental studies and public health. And most of what I do kind of fits within, we'll say, a big category called socio-ecological systems and health. So some themes of the research and the things that I study fit into broadly climate change and how that impacts human health, both directly and indirectly, which makes this a good home for some of the things I do and I'm interested in. And I've been always working on issues of water resources, also defined pretty broadly. So in particular, I've spent a lot of time working on WASH issues, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene. Most of the work I've done has been in and with Indigenous and Arctic communities. And most of my research draws from methods from risk assessment, public health and epidemiology, as well as health geography more broadly. So for quite a while, a decade or more, going back to graduate studies, I've worked on issues around drinking water and sanitation systems in some remote communities in Arctic Canada. And now here at UMaine, and in particular, working with the Arctic System Science, the SANA NRT program that was mentioned earlier. I've gotten involved with projects around irrigation and some small sheep farms and how they use water and South Greenland and dealing with some of the changes, climate changes and freshwater resource changes there. If any of that is of interest, I'm always happy to chat and hear about the things that you're working on. My office is here in this building, actually just down the hall as well. And I'd be happy to have visits from anyone. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Dan Dixon. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the university. And I actually came to the CCI for my grad studies back in a long time ago. And I worked primarily with Paul Majewski, and I was involved in like all aspects of ice core recovery and processing and analysis. So I've been involved in multiple expeditions, drilling cores, melting them in the labs, and then writing papers and reconstructing paleoclimates based on the chemistry contained in the snow and ice. But so more recently, I've been involved primarily in the drilling side of things. So I design, build, operate, and maintain our fleet of ice core drills. And if you're interested in learning how to use a drill, either it's the way it works mechanically or, looks like we lost our picture. Or if you want to know the finer details of ice core recovery, so you don't get your drill stuck, come and see me. I didn't do anything. It's just started doing it. Anyway, In my role as Director of Sustainability, I'm involved in tons of stuff all across campus. I'm trying to reduce the university's carbon footprint and its environmental footprint. I do that primarily by reducing its carbon emissions from the steam plant, also building energy efficiency. And I'm involved in building design and construction. There's some of these new buildings that are going up. I'm looking at how sustainable are they, trying to incorporate sustainable design and energy efficiency in their design. Also been involved in the Maine Climate Council Working Group, a regional climate action plan and resiliency assessment. I've been involved in loads of stuff. So one of the things I really wanted to put out to the students in particular is I'm also the faculty advisor for an online interdisciplinary journal called SPIRE, the Maine Journal of Conservation and Sustainability. And we're always on the lookout for volunteer editors. So there's no money involved, unfortunately. But if you want to get that kind of experience being an editor on a journal that's run as a professional peer-reviewed journal would be, this is a great way to do it. So contact me if you're interested.
Slide there. This isn't me. I'm sort of an oddball too here. I'm Rick Eason, Professor Rick Eason. I retired a couple of years ago from the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, where I taught mostly programming and robotics, logic design. And most recently, I did scientific ballooning, high altitude ballooning, where we'd send up weather balloons into the atmosphere, something Maine Space Grant Consortium got me onto. So as I retired, I was looking for interesting things to do. I thought, well, the Climate Change Institute does a lot of cool things. And talking to Paul, he kind of suggested I become associated with Climate Change Institute. Been kind of busy lately. I thought, well, I'm going to come to this icebreaker and find out what's going on. So I'm sort of here in the role of you graduate students trying to look for opportunities and things to do. But at the same time, I can tell you a little bit about this high altitude ballooning that I've done in case anybody is interested in maybe doing something related to that. With this ballooning, what we do is we launched, don't have a slide anyway. We launched these essentially it's a weather balloon. We use latex balloons, and we can take payloads. With the US regulations, we can take up to 12 pounds. One payload box itself can weigh up to 4 pounds. I say 4 pounds, it can actually be 6 pounds if it has enough surface area. But we send these things up, we put gas in them. I usually use hydrogen, but we put gas in it and they'll go up about, typically we target about 5 meters a second to go up through the atmosphere. We generally attain, it goes up about a constant rate to maybe 115,000 feet. That's 35 kilometers, where the balloon at that time is about 10 meters in diameter, will burst and then come down. And then we recover the payloads. To date, with the university and some launches I've done with a friend, I've done over 160 launches, and I've never yet lost a payload. So we're always recovering those. I've done launches in a couple of them in Hawaii with a friend. We did some in Spain, and I've done 2 of them on my own nickel in Kenya for STEM outreach. So if anyone is interested in maybe doing something related to that, well, feel free to talk to me about it.
This is me. Sorry how it got mixed. I don't know. My name is Fatih Evrendilik. I came here 2 months ago and working as a visiting faculty at Civil and Environmental Engineering under Dr. Apul. And having spent 30 years of research and development and teaching at higher education, and my area of interest involves interaction effects, how to model them. So I'm more interested in the quantification of spatio-temporal dynamics of ecosystem structure and function, especially biogeochemical cycles. I did my PhD on simulation of carbon and nitrogen cycling in croplands at the state of Ohio. And usually what I heavily rely on is process-based modeling and data-driven modeling, including artificial intelligence and remote sensing, ArcGIS, and also I installed one of the first flux towers in Turkey. So we installed a flux tower on a peatland and processed and collected data. And I am interested in using other field sensors also. And two examples of what I've been involved in currently. One is trying to model spatiotemporal dynamics of PFAS cycle following the historical Brunswick spill. The other one is related to nationwide quantification of ecosystem level water use efficiencies across Turkey. And we are trying to simulate how ecosystem level water use efficiency changes in response to changing climate, also changing land use and land cover types, in addition to best management practices. So we do the quantification based on GRACE data, so gravity recovery and climate experiment satellite data. And one of the uncharted waters, I guess, relates to how to couple PFAS cycles and biogeochemical cycles. So if interested in, please contact me. Thanks so much.
I realize I'm between you and pizza, so I will keep this very brief. My name is Ray Salvatore Jennings. I am an external associate with CCI. I have been for about 2 years. And what brought me to CCI was really an interest in exploring in a deeper way something that I've seen in my 28 years of working in international development and humanitarian response. And that is the effects of rapid climate change on fragility and conflict, and the kind of things we're seeing accelerating in fragile states where I typically work. So I've worked in 34 countries, almost all of them in some stage of conflict, lapsing into conflict, continue to spiral in enduring conflict, or trying to transition out of conflict. And increasingly, again, rapid climate change is playing a role in making it far more difficult to recover from conflict. So that's been my interest, especially over the last 10 years. And I thought when I talked to Paul that CCI would be a place to also explore that as I continue my work as a practitioner scholar with the World Bank and with USAID, where I'm a senior transition advisor. My current field work is primarily in South Sudan, which, if you know South Sudan, the challenges there are multiple. It's kind of second only to Somalia in terms of failed state status. It's a very complex place to work. I'm also working in Ukraine. I've worked there since 2014. Complex in a very different way, and throughout the Middle East and North Africa region. And my current field research interests are really, again, looking at how climate change intersects with state fragility and the outcomes of that, which increasingly we're seeing take the form of migration, governance issues, and also the impacts of climate disruption on kind of complex decision-making, and where climate shocks are, making far more complex the kind of policies that we're trying to develop in the international development world. And we're lagging behind, quite honestly. The other aspect of what we're doing, what I'm interested in, is something that's talked about less, which is the impact of conflict on climate. And we can see that just back to the Iraq War, but you can also see that in the Arctic right now with the impact of the Ukraine conflict and the securitization and the militarization of the Arctic and the change in Arctic governance, which is a new research path for me. It's something I'm working on both in the field and within the World Bank
and USAID. So if any of that is of interest to you, I very much welcome discussions and your outreach. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Carl Kreutz. I'm a professor in the Climate Change Institute, and I'm also currently the director of the School of Earth and Climate Sciences. I've been associated with the Institute for quite some time. I actually came here first as a graduate student back in 1992 and moved around a bit after that, but eventually came back. And in all that time, much of my research is focused on Earth's climate history and trying to reconstruct and understand that in lots of different ways, mostly involving geochemistry and a lot of it involving ice and ice cores, but I've also been involved in some marine oceanographic work as well. And I tend to work in polar regions, also in high altitudes and a bit in the North Atlantic. Another big part of what I do here is related to climate education. So I still do a lot of teaching in Earth and Climate Sciences, a large online class that services students from around the university. We do a research learning experience class, and one that I'm involved with heavily is our Sea to Sky experience in Earth and Climate Sciences, which is our capstone class. I've got a couple alumni sitting right here, Mike and Kenzie from 2 years ago. So awesome to see you guys here as graduate students now. And then lastly, climate solutions. I'm getting more and more into looking at the modern water and carbon cycles in a variety of ways. So as I was sitting, I can't help but mention this. I was looking through Betty's wonderful book, and there's a great picture in the middle of it of Seth and Abby Bradford, who was an undergraduate 10 years ago, and they're out on the Ruth Glacier in Alaska. If you want to read a great piece about the Ruth Glacier, check out the New York Times today. It's not Seth or I, but it's colleagues of ours. Great piece on the Ruth Glacier. So check that out. Thank you.
Hi again. My name is Andrei Kurbatov, and I'm again with Climate Change Institute and School of Earth and Climate Sciences. I put here 3 major research themes focus area that I'm working on. They kind of interact with each other. The first one that really on the right, you see this tephra particle. So when volcano is erupting, it basically emits this little tiny particle, and it really allows you to see where the source of volcanic products is coming from. And as you know, probably that volcanic forcing is one of the major natural forcings of climate. So really kind of focusing on this, and we study this. Obviously, I don't do it by myself. It's a huge sort of collaborative effort. And I work here at the School of Earth and Climate Sciences with Marty Yates a lot on a microprop and SEM. We have 2 instruments. Also, I work a lot with Nelly Dunbar and Nels Iverson, the New Mexico Tech. And obviously, anybody who involved in ice cores at the Climate Change Institute or School of Earth and Climate Sciences, I have to collaborate to some degree. And you see this next project, that's something we started 20 years ago here. And one of the early sort of work at Allen Hills area, it's a blue ice area, resulted in one of the sort of oldest ice cores ever collected actually now. And we sort of, with this radar work and there is some preliminary age reconnaissance, we actually feel like we could recover like a 1.5 million continuous year record from the area. It would be probably the longest continuous record available to date from this marginal site. So that's kind of an example how we work together. Again, I'm involved with Paul, with Carl, with Seth, there's Don Winsky. So a lot of us here doing the very similar work in different places. And the final theme, I'm really excited on the right bottom. So I just built this new hyperspectral imaging system in US Ice Core facility. It's really neat and interesting technology. And before it was very expensive. People had it, like NASA had it for like decades. But actually now this camera is dropping in price. So $15,000, you can get this camera, a little scanner. And what it allows you to do basically with this optical scanning, you can actually see the property of the material. So this is a great technology. And again, I'm using it to detect some of these little tephra particles from tropical eruptions and ice cores. And my final theme here, I'm always interested in technology. So one of this, We just had a paper with collaborators from Minnesota, and what we were looking for, how we can use lasers to cut ice cores. And actually, it's really promising technology because you can get this clear cut. You basically don't contaminate your samples, and you don't have to worry about this biological contamination mainly. So you can actually look not just for chemical and other properties, you can look for like biological properties. So those are like three main themes, but obviously we can do a little bit more. Like we're getting into this machine learning now with this hyperspectral stuff because its amount of data we're collecting is really immense. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
So when I'll just talk about the last 5 years that I've been involved in. You can tell from the gray hair, I've been around for a while and I won't bore you with all of that. But the next question is with whom? And I've worked with an awful lot of people in the Institute and the various related academic units throughout the University of Maine system, most recently the law school and School of Engineering and Computing Science, and now the Institute of Medicine. And then I have a lot of global partners that I've worked with and the group with me that has worked with, most recently the Ocean Genome Project, which is doing a global survey of small critters in the ocean to tell what their DNA is, and we're going to do the chemistry related to it. How do we do it? You've heard a little bit about ice cores. We do a lot of ice coring all over the world. In some cases, we climb up to mountains. Other times we fly in. The most exciting thing we've been doing lately, in addition, is sailing. And we sail throughout the Southern Ocean in a small sailboat and also along the coast of Greenland. We use Climate Analyzer a lot, and we have several groups or places that we get our funding from. So the next question is why? Why do we do things? And I started this session here talking about what the Institute does, past, present, and future. That's exactly what we try to do in the sites we've been working in the last 5 years. You start in the top, we've been working in Greenland, taking a look at the water that comes out of glaciers and that's in contact with the rock, et cetera, and how it is changing over time by trying to set up a framework by sailboat going in and out of all the fjords. We are going to compare that data with the pollution loading that we see in the ice cores to get a better idea of how this will eventually come out, how it will impact humans for drinking on the ecosystem. Upper far right, Europe, we have a nice core in collaboration with European colleagues from the Colnefetti. We've done quite a few things there. Probably the most exciting that relates to the present is to determine the absolute natural level of lead. You heard a lot about lead probably on the radio lately. EPA a few years ago said that no level of lead is safe, but that's not what EPA was saying before that. They actually had a level that was close to pre-industrial. We demonstrated that the natural levels of lead can be pretty close to zero, and that in fact in Eurasia, lead has been going into the atmosphere for more than 2,000 years. To the far right, a few years ago, I led the Mount Everest, National Geographic and Rolex Mount Everest expedition, during which we found out the highest glacier in the world is deteriorating. We demonstrated why and how this could affect other alpine glaciers. This is also related to water availability, which is extremely important in places near glaciers, not only for agriculture, but for hydroelectric and on and on. And then we take a look at South America. A couple of years ago, we recovered from a very iconic ice core, the largest tropical ice core in the world, glacier in the world, Quelccaya. We now have a record that goes to bedrock, and we're in the process, along with Dan Sandweiss, Kirk Mosh, and others, of eventually analyzing this core and comparing it to what has gone on in the past and the lessons learned from the past, and also things that can be learned about water availability as a consequence of these glaciers melting. Go down to Antarctica. We have tons of ice cores we've recovered from Antarctica. Dan talked about one of the programs that we did there. Again, we're interested in, as these glaciers melt, what's going into the ocean. Why is productivity so high in the ocean? Might have to do with a lot of iron coming out. And what are the toxic substances that are going to impact? And then finally, coming back to Maine, we're heavily involved now with, will be soon with Acadia National Park, doing some measurements around the park in their monitoring systems for toxic for toxic metals and others. We have a new PFAS facility on the campus, which allows us to do considerable amount of work that we didn't do before. We're hoping to have microplastics instrumentation all added to many of the other labs that we use. So we're trying to, along with that water quality data, also be producing, as we have on a sort of a multi-annual basis, reports that go to the state to talk about what the state of climate is in Maine, what it'll be in the future. And that's along with, in particular, Sean Burkle and others. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Sandweiss. I'm a jointly appointed professor in the Climate Change Institute in the Department of Anthropology, and I'm an archaeologist. I am also the Institute's resident punter. If you haven't been to a Bourne Symposium yet, wait. You'll see, you may get a few examples right now, but you certainly see it then. And if you can't wait, you can go on to the CCI website, find the Bourne Symposium, and look at the last two where you'll find my comments on all of the graduate students' talks. Much of what I do has to do with climate and culture in ancient Peru and how we can use archaeological remains to improve our climate record, particularly in this region where I work, where there are not a lot of natural archives that are directly relevant for the Holocene. And I also work on maritime adaptations, but that's less relevant here. A major focus of this work has been on the El Nino phenomenon over time, tracking it through the Holocene in Peru, and it comes and goes. Come back. Well, I'll keep going, but you may have seen that I was pointing to some evidence, the arrow was pointing to some evidence of El Nino we found on the north coast of Peru in one of our expeditions. I think that was back in 2006. Yeah, that might be. All right. Yeah. It doesn't want to come back. So you're just gonna have to listen to me. I work on ancient maritime adaptations. As I suggested, I had a really good fishy picture to show you, but you're not going to get to see that. I work on intercontinental archaeological practice. That is, throughout my career, I had been trying to work with others to improve relations between archaeological communities in South America and in North America. And I had a good picture to show you that archaeology is a dirty business, but you can't see that either. But finally, I work on equity in archaeological practice, mainly with graduate students and with others around the country, to try and improve the equity stance of the profession of archaeology, which has a lot to answer for over time, but we are working on it. I do that also as part of my work as the president for the Society of American Archaeology, or for American Archaeology. And now you don't get to see the reminder to self that says, clam up.
Let's see.
You're right.
Okay. I'm Jasmine Saros. I'm a professor in the biology department, and I'm also the associate director of the Climate Change Institute. And I'm a lake ecologist and paleolimnologist, and my research questions focus on understanding how lake ecosystems respond to climate and atmospheric deposition. And so some of the tools that we use in our paleolimnology, we look at diatoms, which are shown there, but we also look at things like algal pigments. And then lately we've expanded to looking at environmental DNA of a whole suite of organisms, including higher up in the food chain, such as zooplankton and fish. But we also do a number of contemporary things in lakes as well. So we monitor things like lake temperature, lake chemistry, and we do a number of different types of experiments as well. So some small scale experiments, all the way up to whole lake experiments as well. So we've manipulated entire lake ecosystems to see how climate will influence the response of lakes. I do a lot of work in Maine lakes, but also in alpine lakes out in the Western United States and in Arctic lakes in Greenland, both in West Greenland and South Greenland. And as was mentioned earlier, I'm the program director of the SANA NRT. This involves lots of different faculty and students in the Institute, and we now have about 20 graduate students who are part of the SANA NRT.
But we do offer a number of courses that are open for all students at the University of Maine to participate in. And that includes things like Arctic law and policy, Arctic complex systems, and engaging cross-cultural science. So if you have any interest in any of that, please talk to me. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Burkle. I am an assistant professor here with the joint appointment to the Climate Change Institute and also Cooperative Extension. And I'm the Maine State climatologist. My primary research interests are climate variability with the focus on the North Atlantic and Arctic and how that links into Maine. And I'm also interested in other areas, and I work with a number of people at the Institute and elsewhere on a variety of projects over a different range of timescales. As a state climatologist, I, of course, focus on delivering what's called climate services. That's providing data and interpretation to Maine stakeholders to help inform decision-making. And along those lines, I'm a member of the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee of the Maine Climate Council. I work with state and federal partners to help deliver climate data products and services. And I also commonly meet with teachers, school groups, and other stakeholders on a variety of Maine climate issues. And I've, for many years now, have been developing climate visualization data products, including Climate Reanalyzer, which I know many of you have used. And this provides access to a variety of climate and weather and reanalysis models for us to understand recent climate history, and as well as access to climate projections. And I'm affiliated with both the SANA NRT as well as the One Health NRT. And my office is 135 Sawyer. Any of you who have questions about climate, where to access certain climate data sets or weather information, please feel free to reach out. My email is burkle@maine.edu. And thank you.
I think that's about everybody. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Okay, last one. I'm Matthew Mignani. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology, and I also have an appointment at the Climate Change Institute here with you all. I am originally trained as an anthropological archaeologist, so I'm interested in the stuff that people make and use and put between themselves and their environments. My long-term fieldwork is in Arctic regions of Sapmi, so that's northern Scandinavia, where I work, and I've done long-term participant observation with Sami communities. And just to give you an example of the reindeer herding culture and how the material culture changes, reindeer fur has excellent insulation properties, right? And when you put it on your feet, it is really better than some of the best synthetic materials we have today available to us. But reindeer herding is very sensitive to state policies on reindeer herd sizes. The climate affects how effectively they'll work in these changing freeze-thaw cycles that we see grasping the Arctic regions where we work. And then you have a whole host of other colonial factors that are affecting the cultural transmission associated with the production of these shoes. And so I look at issues like that, but across all of these different material domains. An essential part of this work is now community-based. I lead a UArctic thematic network, University of the Arctic thematic network, here with my colleagues from all over Scandinavia, from indigenous institutions from the Sami Alaskuva in northern Norway to the Sami Museum in Karasjok, which is one of the oldest Sami institutions. And we use digital technologies that are familiar to a lot of you, like photogrammetry, laser scanning, that you're using on a much bigger environmental scale, but we use it to scan the stuff that's in museums. And the reason that's important is because, so we have a narrowing of material culture through these histories of colonization, and similar to, like, you guys are all interested in predictive modeling and where we are looking forward. We're reaching into the museums that are around the world using these technologies to kind of chart pathways forward, looking to what kind of adaptations we could find to these changing climates in the collections, in the material culture of the past. So I look forward to speaking with many of you about these regions and also the overlapping interests and technologies that we have. So thanks.